LoreWarrior Armour, Hunter Light Support Tank. Overview. The Hunter is a popular tank produced by Defiance Industries. Defiance is also a well-known manufacturer of all types of weapons, and its designers have even created two new heavy tanks, the Rommel and the Patton. As its name makes clear, the Hunter Light Support Tank is a support vehicle. Like most support vehicles, the Hunter is not equipped to last in a stand-up fight. It does not, therefore, operate out in the open amid the heavy fighting, but remains behind in sheltering terrain to provide the battlefield commander with indirect fire support. The Hunter is designed to be a cheap, effective combat vehicle that an army can use as backup, in case it needs covering fire in order to pull out of combat. Equipped with the heaviest long-range support weapons available, it can carry out this function very well. After a time, the Hunter became a fairly steady seller for Defiance Industries. New Hunters are still found in many armies across the Inner Sphere. Capabilities. The Hunter's large missile load makes it an extremely effective support vehicle. As Defiance doesn't produce the huge long-range missile rack that the tank requires, the proven battle Farfire Maxi served instead. The Farfire Maxi is the best support weapon available and is used on many different vehicles. The rack is mounted in the popular missile box style toward the rear of the vehicle, facing forwards. This allows the Hunter to fire over defensive barriers without exposing itself to return fire. The Zippo Flamer is mounted as a purely defensive weapon and is used only to set fires to deter any pursuers when the tank is retreating from battle. In fact, the Flamer is normally used only as a cookfire for the vehicle's crew. The Farfire's extreme range usually keeps Hunter tanks from ever getting close enough to need to use their flamers in battle. The Tharhees Mini-Torque and Tharhees Agart are not the Hunter's original targeting and tracking systems. Months after the first few hundred tanks were sold, a problem in the power link-ups caused the comm gear to surge and burn out. The problem turned out to be in the tracking system rather than in the communication system, and so Defiance began installing the Tharhees Agart tracking system. The only problem with this replacement was that some crew members of the original Hunters complained when they could no longer patch the communications gear through the tracking system to receive various clandestine television stations. Combat history. The Hunter is well known for the part it played in the battle for Halstead Station. At one point during this infamous fight, several units of Hunters on both sides squared off on the outskirts of a battle in progress and began to pound each other's troops to pieces. When the battle was over, only the Hunters remained. The two Hunter commanders, each realizing that they couldn't win a long-range fight, met in the middle of the war-torn field, shook hands, and fought hand-to-hand to determine the winner. Both commanders were knocked unconscious roughly the same time. Meanwhile, in another part of the Halstead Station battle, a group of 5 Davian Hunters moved into position on 5 different hillsides around an area that Kurita was using as a holding point for its damaged mechs. The Hunters on the far north hill opened fire with 3 salvos. The missiles, firing at optimum range, created havoc amongst the damaged mechs. Though not at full fighting capability, the Kurita mechs slowly moved to attack the unseen marauders to the north. After the force had moved 20 meters, the Hunters to the northwest immediately opened fire, and once again confused the damaged mechs, who changed course in their sluggish approach toward the most obvious enemy. This time, a new enemy fired. Every time the mechs moved in a new direction in response to their attacks, it eventually wore down both their mech capacity and their pilots' nerves. Wounded and rattled, the Kurita mech warriors eventually ejected from their battered machines in a show of surrender to their superior forces. The Hunter commander permitted the warriors to walk away from the field, but without letting them learn the identity of their conquerors. By appropriating these Kurita mechs, the Hunter commander turned the tide of this major battle in favor of Davian. Had those mechs been repaired in time, later analysis showed that Kurita would have carried the day. Variants. Variants on the Hunter are quite rare, because there is no room to add extra weapons, and usually no reason to remove the LRM-20. Notable vehicles and crew. Jeff Dahl. Commander Dahl is the originator of the famous hidden vehicle tactic used at Halstead Station. It was compassion that prevented him from letting the wounded Kurita pilot see his tank unit. Dahl was aware of the Kurita Code of Honor, and knew that it would have been an unforgivable loss of face for these men to report to their commanding officer that a 5-vehicle support unit had defeated them. Sejanus Alia and Losinja Harama. Alia and Harama were the Davian and Kurita commanders respectively who decided to fight hand-to-hand at the battle for Halstead Station. Neither were demoted, but Alia was severely reprimanded and Harama was sent back to command garrison troops. Yeah, getting back onto all the stuff with the vehicles from TRO 3026. So the Hunter, yeah, it's a 35-ton tracked vehicle that has a 54 kph cruise, 82 flank speed. It uses one of my favourite armour types from Battletech, the Star Slab armour. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward, no-nonsense light tank, basically. Single LRM-20 to the front with enough to fire 12 rounds worth of LRMs, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The Flamer is, as it says, completely perfunctory and not that useful. It has, let's see, 32 armour on the front, 24 on each side, and 16 on the rear with 0 on the turret, mainly because I think the turret is kind of built into the actual hull itself, so it doesn't really count. So it has a total of 96 points of armor, which is pretty good, actually, for a 35-tonner. It means it can take quite a few hits before it goes down. Its actual move speed, cruise is 5, flank is 8, which isn't bad. It means it can stay relatively mobile for what it is. So it gives you a good perspective that tanks at this weight are capable of firing something as powerful as an LRM-20. You look at a battle mech that might be, you know, the same weight. Let's take a Panther, for instance. So it can effectively do roughly the same damage if all of its weapons hit its PPC and all 4 of its SRMs. It's almost the same damage as if all the missiles from the LRM-20 hit, but the big difference there is that because it's a tank, it's got some advantages over the mech. It's not as maneuverable, but it doesn't have to worry so much about its positioning. It can hide behind a hill and fire over. It's got a pretty heat-efficient weapon, so heat isn't an issue for the tank. And yeah, it can cause a lot of damage, and you only need a few of them to really ruin someone's day. So yeah, so that's the Hunter light support tank. Good to get back into these for me, actually. So I need to finish this book. So thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.